Thank you everyone for taking the time today, and welcome to the Bytes and NetApp Spot webinar. We've got a really exciting session for you today. I believe it's one of those products, in my opinion, that is just such a no-brainer for customers, and we've seen such a huge success. So thank you for taking the time. So I am Matt Keeble. I'm the head of the AWS practice here, and we're also joined by Carl, who is one of the Spot solution architects. We're going to be talking today a little bit about how NetApp have created a suite of services that have become a real core part of all cloud companies and their ability to save money. I'm the head of the AWS practice, but it's worth noting that this is a multi-cloud solution. So whether you're on the Azure, AWS or GCP cloud platform, this is relevant to all. The reason that I'm joining today is because we launched with the AWS team, and we've seen such a huge success across our whole customer base that I've been on more calls about this product than most other things. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the reason why it's so important for customers at the moment. As you can imagine, the cost of living, the energy crisis, everything else going on in inflation, we've had a lot of our customers reach out to us about how to reduce costs in the cloud. And not only that, cloud optimization and cloud FinOps is one of the most difficult parts, because you're also busy building new platforms, new products, new services for your customers, that ensuring that you're reducing costs where you can, and having resource to be able to deliver that is also a really difficult piece. So our FinOps team are here to support. In terms of who we are as a cloud FinOps practice, Bytes have been around for multiple years now in the Azure and AWS space. We manage millions and millions in monthly cloud spend for our customers, and we have dedicated FinOps teams and tooling. So we use tools like Cloud Checker and a quantum tool that Bytes is built themselves to allow customers to. And yes, the slides will be shared, Cassie, so thank you. Of dedicated FinOps teams and tooling. So we use tooling to allow our customers to gain that extra visibility on top of cloud native tools, which allows our customers to get that visibility and that confidence in savings. So we can support them, give them recommendations, highlight key areas of savings that allow our customers to be confident on cloud usage. The reason the NetApp Spot have come in is because they've added a level of automation, and they've increasing savings on top of what we're able to offer. So removing the requirement for resource, adding a level of flexibility, and if I'm being honest, ease, which has allowed the Spot team to be so successful alongside the Bytes cloud team. The Spot services will cover things like compute, Spot instances, and Kubernetes, and they've also got a lot of things in the pipeline around storage and a lot more, which Carl will go into more detail on at a high level today. The great news for our customers, and the reason we've been so successful, is that we work on a win-win model. We're incentivized to save you more money. That's how we're successful alongside you, and you'll find out a little bit more about how that works today. Alongside our value-added services that I referenced, things like the Cloud Checker and quantum tooling is a value-added service that we can provide you, which gives you that extra level. But without further ado, I'll hand over to the most important one in the room, who knows these products inside and out. So Carl will be taking over from here, and I'll speak to you in a bit. Thanks, Carl.
Mr. Keeble, thank you very much. The introduction I wrote about myself didn't say all-round good guy, so I'm pleased to see that.
That was me.
That's very kind of you. So yes, that's me, a Spot Solutions architect, certified FinOps practitioner, FinOps Foundation. I'm also working Kubernetes and all three clouds, doing all kinds of stuff. People are using the spectrum of cloud services, and we want to help them with whatever workloads they're running. What we're going to talk about today is unleashing your cloud, right? And the cloud should be an enabler. And too many customers we speak to now see the cloud as a burden, normally fiscally, because the cloud done in some ways, not the best ways, can be really expensive. Particularly if you've just copied a bunch of stuff to the cloud, that can become very pricey, and all of your cloud budget is consumed by running stuff instead of transforming, right, and deploying new services and innovating. And what we want to do is help our customers in an automated way free up that investment so they can transform, so they can do new things, build new services, and use the enablement of a cloud to scale and grow and innovate. Talking about who we are, Spot itself is a FinOps Foundation Premier Partner, which means we have a certain amount of FinOps expertise, certified personnel and so on. The Foundation's a really cool organization. If you sign up, you can do the certification. There's a great book that will help you get an understanding of cloud FinOps. And they have regular meetups, both virtually and physically, and you can go and hear from your peers on how they're addressing the challenges of cloud costs. For our company, Spot by NetApp is NetApp's Cloud Ops portfolio. And what that means is we want to have this suite of products so we can meet a customer wherever you happen to be on your cloud journey. And that could be helping you with FinOps as a service, with Eco there on the left. Or if you're an advanced cloud user, helping you with Apache Spark and Kubernetes, with Ocean for Spark on the right. Maybe you need virtual desktops from Azure, and we can deliver that in a very simple and cost-effective way with Spot PC. All of the Spot products are about automation, and that's the real key differentiator for Spot, is when we manage something for you, we're going to optimize that today, from when it goes in, but also every day, for as long as you run the platform. So you're never having to go and make changes or adjust things. It's always adapting itself to the changing cloud and your changing workload. What we have on the left there is the cloud checker piece, and that's about visibility and understanding recommendations and best practices. So that forms this sort of cloud management platform piece of the puzzle. And when you combine a CMP with our automation, you get this beautiful end-to-end solution that automates as much as possible and then lets you know where you need to be making manual changes where there is no automation. In terms of what we do for customers, we can help customers wherever they are on the cloud journey with varying different workloads that they have. On the left there, Wildlife is a gaming studio, and they just needed some help managing reservations and commitments. So they picked up Eco with FinOps as a service to help them achieve their cost reduction targets, and they exceeded their original product goals by 3 times. Gum in the middle are a technology company. So they provide services to advertisers. They basically make sure that your company's brand ends up in a place where there's eyes that you want to see it, and the brand doesn't end up in a place where you might not want your logo associated with. And they do so in an AI way that's analyzing automatically destination websites and so on. They rolled out a Spot product, and yes, they got a 60% reduction in compute costs, but what they also got, taking advantage of the other automation we have, is it was twice as quick for them to roll out code updates. So their platform got cheaper and it got faster. Right? It was quicker to change. The third customer on here, Zest Finance, a digital finance platform, right, providing finance on phones. They were concerned about the risk of Spot instances, even with the magic we do that I'll talk about later. So what they did first was write this on risk calculations overnight that had to finish, but they didn't care if there was the occasional restart. Anyway, it went perfectly in there. Everything was wonderful. So they then rolled this platform out, and now we manage the compute for their customer-facing applications, right, live services. And again, big reduction in compute spend, so they're happy with that. But also, they no longer worry about the resources we manage, right? There's aspects of cloud management that are now automated for them, so they can focus on other things. So the cloud is simple until it's not. Right? On day 0, if you just stand up a cloud environment, right, I could go and do this now in another browser window, it'd be pretty easy. But then over time, if you think about the things that make cloud good, right? Velocity, scale, rate of innovation, change, having that changing environment, these things make the cloud over time complicated to manage, and complicated especially from a fiscal point of view. Understanding where you're spending money or who in your organization is spending money and why, understanding if that's making you money or it's just a cost center. And we were founded to address this complexity by automating as much as we can, automated cost optimization, automated scaling up and down, to enable you to simplify that ongoing optimization not have to use engineer time for it, because if you have DevOps engineers who are really hard to come by still, the hiring market out there for DevOps skill folks is crazy. You don't necessarily want to be burning them on optimization. They're building your next big thing, right? They're unleashing the cloud for you, and we want to help with that. So in terms of some basic cloud concepts that will help us understand the rest of the presentation, the first one is like, what is FinOps? So it could just look like a term that people have come up with to make finance sound cloudy. And it's not, it's absolutely not. So if you imagine on premises, you have procurement and finance, you would buy some kit for a project, it might turn up in 6 weeks. You would be planning out maybe 3 years ahead, right? You need to capitalize on that investment. So you're trying to use the most of something. Procurement would deal with big, purchases every quarter, every year, however your business used to run. But there would be a business case and all this procedure would happen. In the cloud, potentially every day, every minute, an engineer is now purchasing stuff for your company and making changes. And you want that. You want that flexibility, that speed, right? You don't want to hold people back with too much process. What that means is the traditional procurement and finance models don't keep up with that. They can't. So what we need to do is bring finance and DevOps closer together. So finance becomes much more agile, much more flexible, and really closely tied with the engineers in the business. And some of it is going to be about driving behavioral changes, right? FinOps people need to manage other people, get the engineers invested in building things in a good, cost-effective way. Because left to their own devices without any financial controls, an engineer will normally build big, because that's safe and it gives them lots of performance and they don't have to think about it. So the FinOps Foundation defines this as bringing engineering, finance, and the business teams together to make data-driven spending decisions. So FinOps, yes, in many cases is about spending less, but in just as many cases is about understanding where you're spending money to make money and spending more there, and maybe spending less on things that don't need that level of investment. So at a very high level, what Spot does is help with the cloud bill, amongst a bunch of other things. But for today, we're talking about unleashing your cloud costs. And a cloud bill is, in theory, very simple. It's the rate at which you pay for a thing times how much of the thing that you used. Of course, in practice, that gets a lot more complex when you have lots of things. But ultimately, what we do is we help you buy at the correct rate in an automated way. It's not always about buying a Spot instance, for example, that I'll define soon. It's not always about using a reserved instance. Sometimes on demand is the right answer, even though it's the most expensive. Then it's about usage, right sizing, which would be a very common term, scheduling things on and off, auto scaling up and down to match your infrastructure to the workload, right, which is cloud nirvana. And the more cloud native you are, the more flexible you can be with these models, right? And the more you can do to have that perfect cloud bill. So there are 3 ways you can buy compute in the cloud. And we have more products. So there's one coming out focused on storage. There's security, Apache Spark, desktops, and so on. But compute is normally the first goal for cloud spend optimization. The first way to buy compute in the cloud is you can buy on demand. It's the classic way. There's no real risk to it. You get the best SLA. No one's going to take it away from you. It's the most expensive. So you pay per second. It's very convenient because there's no commitment, but you pay for that convenience. However, it's still the most common way because it's simple. People don't have to think about it, right? There's no extra complexity there. The second way is to reserve your capacity, which is the second most common way. Basically, you're saying to the cloud vendor, I will run this for 3 years, I promise, can I have a discount? And they will absolutely give you some pretty good discounts for that. The more you pay up front and the longer you commit to run, better discounts you get. However, the drawback is you're now less cloudy. You can't scale a commitment down, typically. It is exactly that, a commitment. And that can mean that many folks don't use as much as they should from a reservation perspective, or they take a very long time to make a decision, by which time they might have burned 6 months to a year already. Now, the break-even point for a 1-year reservation is normally about 8 months. So if you spend 6 months making a decision, financially, you should just board it at the start and then figure it out later. But there's complexity there, right? You've got to think about this. The third way is to buy the excess capacity from the cloud vendor. All of them have this big band of flux space, right? For new customers, scaling workloads, seasonal events, and so on. When that's not being used, they will sell it to you at 70, 80, 90% discount because they want people to use it, right? If it's unused, they make no money from it at all. The benefits to you, great discount, no commitment, right? It's super cheap. The drawback is if they need that excess compute for another customer on demand, a committed usage customer, they will take it away from you. So it's inherently less reliable. Where we're coming in is we're simplifying and de-risking making reservations and commitments. We are simplifying and de-risking using spot instances to give you this optimized blend of cost models. So when you're thinking about how to optimize your cloud, right, how you want to take this forward, you need to think about where you are on the cloud journey. Because we all know just moving to the cloud doesn't necessarily mean you're cloud native or your workloads are cloud native. In the cloud, you can kind of map out your workload profile onto this chart over time here. So the first thing many customers hit the cloud with is a bunch of lift and shift, right? Stateful applications, monolithic applications that were running in my on-premises data center for 10, 20 years just fine. Now they run on some VMs in the cloud. Okay, what next? That's a fairly expensive way to do IaaS, which we can absolutely help with. But what you can do is fairly limited. Then over time, people start to adopt horizontally scaling workloads. Code development with GitLab or Jenkins that has a task-based architecture, HPC, web infrastructure that might run on 10, 20, 100 nodes at the same time, 100 VMs, something that spans many instances. When you have those, you can start to be very clever with how you scale up and down, maybe use spot instances and so on. And then the top right, if you've containerized your applications, you're talking microservices, Kubernetes, these kind of platforms, you have the best ability to really get the perfect cloud spend. Spend just as much as you really need, not a dollar more, not a dollar less, and scale that up and down and have a sort of a perfectly right-sized infrastructure. And AWS call this out. This is from one of their presentations, their sessions, in how you sort of start in the cloud and the steps you take. Now, they're not always necessarily in this order. This is AWS's order. You can always change it around. And what they're talking about is, on-premises to lift and shift. Okay, no huge advantages there necessarily. But then you start to do some right-sizing of the instances. You think about elasticity, so scaling. You think about understanding, forecasting, measuring, monitoring, driving people to change behavior with maybe a cloud management platform. Looking at the pricing model, spot instances, reserved instances, savings plans, committed usage discounts, this kind of thing. Look at storage optimization, look at serverless and containers. And you can see the further the more steps you take on this journey, they have the usage in the background where, for broadly speaking, the same amount of money, you get a lot more cloud, a more bang for your buck. So the customer profiles in the cloud. Now, of course, we could sit down over a beer and debate exactly where people live on the spectrum. It is exactly that. It's an analog journey, if you like. But roughly, when I talk to customers, I can say this one is maybe new to the cloud. A bunch of lift and shift VMs. So it had stuff on premises, now runs in the cloud. Their applications run on a single VM. It's not horizontally scaling. It might run on 2 VMs with some sort of clustering. It's fairly limited. They might not really do any DevOps at all. Might have some DevOps engineers sort of just spinning up. Probably don't have any FinOps people. Then they will, at some point, be on the journey. So they'll still have the lift and shift. There are lots of companies out there with huge technical debt, right, in these massive environments, consuming that cloud budget and preventing innovation. They will be doing some Kubernetes, right? They are starting to transform. I don't think there's much debate in that people want to transform. It's just not always easy. They will have DevOps engineers for sure, and they might be spinning up a FinOps function, right? FinOps is still new to many, many companies out there. Then you have the third classification of company, the cloud native folks. Now, they could be new to the cloud because they're a new business, but if they're born in the cloud, they're going to be in this box. So they're natively auto-scaling, natively microservices, using Kubernetes and serverless options from the cloud. They've got DevOps, they might have FinOps if they're of a certain size, and they are able to execute continuous optimization. So their infrastructure is changing minute by minute to match the workload requirements that they have, which means they can be super efficient. Now, I apologize to the new to the cloud customers for using a little paper airplane. It's the only other flying little icon that I had. I quite like this little icon set. So what can we do for the folks who are new to the cloud? The first thing is to help with FinOps, right? FinOps as a service with the Eco product line. What you get with Eco is an automated platform that looks at your cloud installation and figures out the best commitment portfolio to apply to that. Now, behind that automation is our big cloud FinOps team, right? Specialists in Azure and AWS know these platforms inside out, and you get the benefit of the automation and of their experience and knowledge. You know, they know how to make the right decisions wherever you might be in the world without having to hire FinOps people. All of this is success-based pricing, so there's no upfront investment. They will work for you, save you money with reservations and commitments, and then at the end of the month, you know, take a share of the savings. The kind of thing that they can do for a customer, in AWS, for example, is drive you from maybe 40–50% coverage with a savings plan, which is the classic way people doing commitments in the cloud now, the most common way, because it's very simple. They're going to drive that coverage up with this very custom portfolio. And they do so in a way that maintains flexibility. So it's not about just going in and saying that you've got all these VMs, we'll just put a bunch of reserved instances in. What we're looking for is ways to increase the coverage without overcommitting. So they want to protect you in that way. Now, reservations on day zero, again, pretty easy. I've got 100 VMs, I put some RIs in, I'm done. But 1 year, 2 years down the line, when things are expiring at different times, I've got different teams spinning up infrastructure, if things are changing. The cloud is changing in the range of commitments that they offer. It gets very complex. It can become quite a horrible spreadsheet exercise. And that means even if you have FinOps people, they may not be best spent, you know, running these expensive folks, running those spreadsheets, right? You can automate that and then redirect your FinOps people to drive tagging. So you understand who owns what, who's spending what, right? Drive reporting, interact with humans and drive changes in human behavior. Then in the background, we'll automatically be driving up your coverage. In AWS, we use a lot of the RI marketplace features. So on your behalf, we will sell unused commitments. So there are actually ways to, you know, scale down commitments. You can get out of that as long as someone else is willing to pick it up. And we will find someone to pick up that commitment from you. But also, if you're scaling up, then we'll be looking at the marketplace, you know, looking at our other Eco customers and saying, well, instead of buying you a brand new commitment, I'll find you a partially used one. So you get the 3-year tier of discount, but only 18 months levels of commitment. You get this very flexible, ever-changing custom portfolio of commitments that's tracking the changes in your environment every day. Azure is broadly speaking the same. They have a somewhat different reservation model to AWS, but we'll be working to keep things exchangeable and cancelable. So enterprise agreements in Azure, you have a set amount that you can cancel every year from Microsoft, but also they have a lot of ability to change a commitment. So if we're managing your portfolio and we see, you know, your engineers have stopped using one type of VM, started using a different one, we are going to tweak and adjust your commitment portfolio so as you've not got unused commitments anymore. You'll still be getting value from them. And if we can't do that, then we'll use the cancellation limit to get rid of them for you. Again, all managed in an automated way. You're not hiring FinOps people to do this. We do it for you and then sharing the success after. The second thing you can do with lift and shift architectures, you can't really do this for production ones because when you're using spot instances, you know, the cloud vendor at some point, even with the cool things we do, will recover that spot instance. which can lead to basically what looks like extra reboots. However, if you have sort of tier 2, tier 3 non-production workloads, people have bunches of terminal servers, all the random servers that you look at, your list of machines doing stuff that are not necessarily frontline services. Many customers now are accepting a slightly reduced level of reliability for an 80% cost reduction. A spot instance normally is ephemeral, so you can't use it for this kind of workload because when the cloud vendor takes it away, they get rid of the data and the IP address. What we do is we protect IP address, the name, data, everything that makes that VM what it was. And when we recycle it onto a new, healthy, either on demand or a new spot instance automatically for you, we bring back all of that identity. So you get the benefits of the heavy discount of spot instances with no commitment, right? No commitments there to use for those non-production workloads. And it's a wonderful alternative or a complementary method to maybe using reservations and commitments for the production piece of that classic architecture, and then using spot instances still for the non-production, the less important things. They give you less business value, but you still have to run. Here's an example from a nice little POC I was running, happened to be in Azure, just stepping up over time to cover more and more single VMs. Spot is delivered as a SaaS platform, so there's nothing for you to install. You just link it up to your project, your subscription, your account, and start importing workloads as you choose to. So the transforming customer. I don't have special slides for the customer who's transforming, who's on the journey, because they can pick and choose from everything, because they've got workloads all over the shop. And that means arguably they have the toughest task of all. They've maybe done some initial early wins, right? They've made some changes, but they've now kind of hit a wall or really hit the hard work. Right? Easy stuff's been done. So we can help customers on the journey with transforming the legacy IaaS infrastructure, the lift and shift kind of workloads, but also as you're spinning up cloud native workloads like Kubernetes, we can dramatically simplify how they interact with the cloud, make them easier to adopt, and also ensure they're going to be perfectly cost optimized from day zero, and therefore make it easier for you to transition and move workloads over to those. So the cloud native piece, scaling workloads and containerized workloads. So the more cloud native things, big data, HPC, batch jobs, software development with things like GitLab and Jenkins. Web infrastructure is a classic one. NoSQL databases. There are some modern SQL databases that can scale as well, like CockroachDB, pretty neat. And then, of course, containers, so Kubernetes, ECS in Amazon, so on. There's huge potential for these kind of workloads because of the scaling component. It means we can start to automatically right-size the infrastructure according to your business workload. Because they're running multiple VMs, we have much more ability to sub in spot instances and manage replacing instances in the background from the cluster. And you can just build this infrastructure that's automatically going to be the right size and bought at the right cost model without human interaction. The journey we like to take these customers on, the cloud native customers, many cloud natives still will make heavy use of on-demand. Just because they're cloud native doesn't mean they've got a full commitment portfolio, or they've started using spot instances already. But it means you're in a great place to take advantage of these kind of features. So we want to take a customer from having lots of on-demand, normally some reservations, and maybe a handful of spot instances, to making spot instances safe and easy to use as much as possible, because you get that 70 or 80% discount because there's no commitment. Then what we do, drive reservations for as much of the rest as we can. So still get the discounts on the workloads that can't be run on a spot instance for whatever reason that might be. And then use as little on demand as possible because that's the most expensive cost model. Now there's absolutely still a use case for it. Right? Things that are scheduled that are maybe stateful sets in Kubernetes, particularly sensitive workloads, there will always be on demand, but what we want to do is use as little of that as we can. The next thing we'll be doing is taking over the auto scaling and tracking the actual performance requirements as closely as we can. And this is basically right-sizing the infrastructure and the components of that infrastructure to meet the workload. Right-sizing is important because if I provision 100% of something, but I only use 60%, I pay the bill for the 100%. That's 40% of my compute cost doing nothing. Right? That's just money that I didn't need to spend. So if we can just track that as closely as we can, but not too low, right? We don't want to go under, and we get that Goldilocks zone of the right level of performance, reliability, and an automatic cost model optimization. Now, Spot has some real clever things for scaling workloads, is we can actually start to predict workloads going up ahead of time. So with some of the more advanced features, if I've got an online retail store, a couple of days a month, for whatever reason, it gets super busy, Spot can start to predict that ahead of time and scale up the infrastructure before you even have the CPU load to require it. So we can give a better customer experience as well. A lot of what we do is about cost optimization, but a lot of what we do is about making the infrastructure more responsive and adaptive and have a better user experience. The little heat map on the right reflects one of the absolute core features that we have with Spot. What that is the ability to model the health, the lifetime predictions, the risk of using these Spot VMs. Now remember, a Spot VM is the excess capacity that the cloud vendor has. So if they need to take it away to give it to a full price customer, they will. Natively, you don't get any information about that from a cloud vendor. What we have are advanced machine learning models that we've been training for 6 years, and they ingest the historical data, lots of live telemetry as well. And those models understand everything from seasonal events like Prime Day right in AWS, whenever the retail might shoot up, Black Friday, holiday seasons, all of these good things. They watch changing telemetry and metrics to be able to predict basically how long a Spot instance is going to live for. So what we're doing is when we're picking these VMs for your workloads, we are picking ones that could be more reliable. So we're increasing the effective reliability of using that naturally quite volatile cloud resource. By doing that, we can make it much more acceptable to use in production for more workloads. And when they're not available, we're automatically going to put on demand in place, right? So we will still guarantee your applications run. We're taking that risk away of you getting stopped because there are no Spot VMs, right? It's not a problem with us. Then the final step of that, right, so Spot to on demand, is we also then re-optimize back to Spot VMs when they're safe. So you can basically be confident that in the background, your infrastructure is always running on the correct pricing model at any one moment in time. And you don't have to get involved in that decision. It's automatically making the best choice for you based on reliability and cost at the same time. So in terms of products, Elastic Group is the heart that does all of the lifetime prediction I spoke about. That does the predictive rebalancing and scaling and so on. You would be considering Elastic Group if you're looking at web infrastructure, NoSQL databases, scaling workloads, and things like that. Built on top of that is Ocean. And Ocean is a fantastic product for containers in the cloud. So it's Kubernetes, in all three cloud vendors. Also, AWS have ECS, which is their own container version. We support that as well. And what it does is it plugs into your existing Kubernetes environment and gives you a serverless experience. But I like to call it a kind of hybrid serverless experience. As opposed to the cloud vendor serverless offerings like Fargate and similar, where they kind of black box all of the infrastructure. With Ocean, you still have access to everything. You control how your serverless infrastructure behaves and customize the rules by which it operates. But in daily operation, you don't care about the compute infrastructure. Ocean is automatically going to adapt your Kubernetes cluster according to your workloads you put on it, and also to the changing cloud infrastructure on the back end. So with Ocean, there are 3 steps of this cost optimization, amongst all the other things that Ocean does. The first thing is automated cost model selection. So for your Kubernetes cluster, every time it needs a new VM, a new instance, it's going to look at the reliability of the Spot VMs. It's going to look at the reservation commitment portfolio you might already have. Because if you're already paying a bill for a reserved instance, it's better for us to use that, save you money that way. It will use on demand if there are no commitments available and the Spot VMs aren't looking reliable enough. Always making this decision for you on the back end. It will also spin up on demand if your application demands it. So if you have special containerized apps, sensitive stateful sets or something like that, again, you don't care about the infrastructure. You just ask the app team to mark their application as such. Ocean takes care of the rest inside the Kubernetes you're already running. That's going to drive maybe 70% of the cost of your Kubernetes cluster out the window from a compute perspective. The second stage is the pod-driven scaling and the advanced bin packing. And I can kind of summarize these as saying this is right-sizing your infrastructure every 5 minutes. And it also right-sizes when it scales. So Ocean is always looking at the layout of your applications in your Kubernetes cluster in the cloud, thinking about ways to move them around. Can it compact these down? Normally, Kubernetes nodes run about 60% utilization in the cloud. We are going to take that up to 80% or 90%, driving another 20 or 30% cost efficiency out of that cluster. We're going to do so in a way that obeys all of the rules your app teams have set, so they're not going to get unhappy that you've put this in. Still, we're not breaking anything they're doing, but we're just going to make sure everything is running as efficiently as it possibly can. Then the scaling component is where a lot of the serverless aspect comes into play. So you don't configure Kubernetes with some set instances anymore. In fact, you don't care about instance types at all. Ocean will look at all of the hundreds of instances that the cloud vendor has and make the best decision at that moment in time on what to scale to. And it'll look at the application requirements. Are they asking for a GPU? How much CPU and memory do the new apps want? Again, it will look at reliability of Spot VMs. Does the application want on demand? All of things automatically considered when it scales up your environment. The final sort of component there is it will also right-size the applications. So in Kubernetes, your app teams put a description in saying, I want this much performance from the cluster. And in most cases, that's set quite high because apps are new. They want to give it time to settle down and understand what performance it really needs. Ocean is going to complete that loop and say, this application is requesting 10 CPUs, only ever uses 2. So you can tweak those resource requests down, make the cluster even more efficient, make the bin packing even more efficient. And when you combine all of these together, you're easily looking at 80% of the compute cost driven out of your Kubernetes cluster. And in terms of adoption, Ocean takes about half an hour to deploy, and then it's going to run on an ongoing basis. It's incredibly simple to use. Here's a screenshot of the UI, great utilization on this cluster at 90%. And you can see we like to lead with the savings number there. So getting started, it's easy and free to try because it's the cloud, right? That's the cloud way. It's one of the reasons why I love the cloud, especially as an engineer. Compared to my on-premises days where I had to go and beg for lab equipment or share time in a lab, build a whole lab when I wanted to use it, learning stuff in the cloud is great. Right? You just log into the console and start building things. Love that. So there are 2 main tracks to testing this stuff. So FinOps as a service, the Eco product delivered through Bytes. They can set up for you a free analysis and a proposal and no commitment. And we can look at the environment with our FinOps team and come up with numbers on what we could do for you, how we could help, and enumerate that. On the workload side, workload optimization piece, stateful nodes for the single VMs, scaling workloads with Elastigroup, Ocean for Kubernetes. You can register at the SaaS console. Then it's free to try for up to 20 VMs. For a more formal proof of concept, you can get in touch with Bytes again, and we will work together to deploy it to our test environment, import some of your workloads, save some real money, and see if you like the product. We have an automated discovery, so you can connect it up to your accounts. This one is focused on AWS, and then it will give you suggestions on where you could start to use Spot. Now, left possibly the best until last in terms of how this is priced. They call it success-based pricing. I like to call it adaptive billing as well. Spot is based around a no commitment sort of success, a gain share kind of model. So at the end of every month, we figure out how much money we saved you all clear to see in the UI, and then you pay a percentage of that. So for different workloads where you save different amounts of money, it's naturally tracking the value you get from the platform. For different times of the year, maybe we save you more 1 month, a bit less the next month. It's automatically changing as it goes through, adapting to the changing cloud and your changing workloads. So that's me. Thank you very much for listening to me rattle on for 40 odd minutes. Talking about unleashing your cloud, right? Automation is key. The cloud is automation, in fact, and we want to bring that into more places and free up your time. Freeing up your time with using the right tools means we take pain away from you, and then we free you to go and work on the things that make your business different. Right? The stuff that adds value to your company rather than just doing the nuts and bolts of cloud optimization. Now I will hand back to Mr. Keeble. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Carl. And I just want to kind of reiterate as a partner that the technology that we've seen just now and the services has been very, very, very popular with our customers. And as I say, the really simple thing to do as a next step is to plug these tools in. So as Carl rightly mentioned, Eco, if that's something that ticks your box, then we can plug that in using the analyzer tool. It takes about 10 minutes to do so. And then we can send back realized savings within 10 days, and then we can talk about next steps. Elastic Group Notion, obviously identifying a POC workload and letting that run. The good thing about that is that any savings you make during that POC, whether you proceed or not, are yours to keep. So a little bonus there. And then for those customers that are struggling in more ways than the services you've seen today, Bytes also partner with NetApp around Cloud Checker, and for Azure customers, we have our own in-house tool called Quantum, which allows you guys to get even more granular detail and can identify things like zombie infrastructure and things that maybe sit outside some of these services you've seen today. So there is a button on this platform. If you've not used it before, you can see there's a big button saying book meeting. That takes you through to a link which gives you some dates and times via a web link called Calendly. Please do click on that link, book a time to speak to us, and we'll ensure either myself, Carl, or one of the team is available to discuss next steps. As I'm talking, please do ask any questions in the Q&A box. We do have a little bit of time, so please do take the time to ask any questions you have. But as I said, a really great product, really easy to identify savings, so that you can you can have an informed understanding of savings available before you make any decision on whether to progress with Bytes and NetApp Spot. But yeah, thank you everyone for your time today. Thank you, Carl, for speaking, and we very much look forward to speaking to you soon about how we can help you continue to reduce your AWS, Azure, or GCP costs using these services.